Today on Typical Books, we're going to be talking about some of the new books coming out this January. I'm a little behind, but I was caught up looking at the list for February and I realized, whoa, I haven't done this video yet. Some of these books are actually on the Patrons Pick poll, and one of them I'm halfway through reading because I ended up with an arc of that particular book. So we'll get to that. It's the last book on the list. I think there's about 10 books here. So January is looking really good for horror, but just wait for February. The covers are impeccable, and these are really, really good too. I think part of why I forgot that I hadn't done a video for January is because I talked about a lot of these books in my previous video for December, and I've mentioned these books tangentially, and I put the patron pick poll up early, so I think that I felt like I'd already talked about these books. So yeah. To start off, we have Wake Up and Open Your Eyes by Clay McLeod Chapman. The cover features this faceless family at a table. It's very 50s, evocative of the 50s, and it's a lot of red and white, so it's very stark looking. And this is a book that really caught my eye. Noah Fairchild has been losing his formerly polite Southern parents to far-right cable news for years, so when his mother leaves him a voicemail warning that the Great Reawakening is here, he assumes it's related to one of the many conspiracy theories that she believes in. But when his own phone calls go unanswered, Noah makes the long drive from Brooklyn to Richmond, Virginia. There he discovers his childhood home in shambles, a fridge full of spoiled food, and his parents locked in a terrifying trance-like state in front of the TV. Panicked, Noah attempts to snap them out of it and get the medical help. I had definitely talked about this book in the December list, and if you recall, this really spoke to me because of that post-pandemic thing. A lot of readers and horror writers thought, like, what would the virus do to horror? And this is the sort of books that we've been waiting for, right? I think this is maybe the beginning of it. So that one is definitely on my list, and there are arcs available for it right now too. So I'm sure a lot of people have already read it. Reviews are starting to come out. Also on January 7th, we have Wicked Jenny by Matt Hilton. And the cover is quite striking to me because it's got this face made up of like a circulatory system on black. So it's really stark, and it sets off this yellow font that's like a bold brush print text. And yeah, really interesting looking stark cover. And there's a lot of like oranges and yellows in typography coming up this month and next. 1988, 13-year-old Andy Miller and his friends, Carl, Brian, Johnny, and Gavin, become witnesses to a vicious attack of their classmate Poppy and the brutal murder of her sister at a flooded railway line called the Frog Ponds. They lead the police to a suspect, a vulnerable older boy whose differences single him out, but when he commits suicide, his guilt is never proven. And the crime goes unpunished until now. Carl's body is found beside the same body of water, and the lives of the four remaining friends start to unravel. Is the hag-like woman terrorizing their every waking moment really a grown-up Poppy hell-bent on revenge, or something else? Something steeped in childhood nightmares. Something determined to reveal the truth and punish the wicked. The cover's interesting. I don't know how it ties into the story, but it doesn't compel me the way that this summary does. A very well-written summary, I will say. On January 14th, we have At Midnight We Possess the Damned by Andre Duza and Nick Cato. This book is on my list because it's very, very interesting to me. Red and black oil paint style cover. It's very like a stark, weird, impressionistic looking style for the cover. Lots of red and blacks. And it's got this guy in a leather mask with a camera pointed at the viewer like he's filming you. And it's just creepy. At first I didn't really get what that was all about until I read the summary. There are casual fans and then there are genuine fanatics. Gary has been obsessed with the extreme side of cinema since he could remember, and he's been on a quest to see every infamous film possible. The more shocking, the better. He even tried his hand at making his own films, but tonight he will be part of the urban legend, the thing people like him fantasize about. Gary is going to see an actual snuff film, but what he witnesses on the small screen at a secret location is only the beginning of a downward spiral where entertainment and fate collide, where Gary discovers there is a latent reason for his lifelong fascination with the dark side. Okay, I am a huge fan of extreme horror. My husband, Chris, was the host and creator of Bind Torture Cast, a long-running extreme horror film podcast. I listen to the Spinsters of Horror shows often about extreme horror. I like watching various YouTube videos and Spooky Astronauts when she gets really dark. That's my favorite. yeah, this is really up my alley because I like films about the topic as well, like 8mm, with our hero, Nicolas Cage. On the total opposite end of the spectrum, we have also on January 14th, Dark Worlds We Wander by Kristen Kirby. The cover is like this winter scene of a person walking in like a snowy glen with a bit of forest on the side, which looks kind of normal, but then there's a huge blood spatter on the front, probably denoting the horror portion of the show, and a huge planet looming very close in the background, denoting the sci-fi part of the show. In this collection of 15 science fiction and horror tales, endure nuclear winter with Earth's last desperate survivors, help a trapped woman in her laundry room battle something terrifying in her clothes dryer, or travel with a convicted man on his lonely walk to prison across a desert planet, going from the most crowded cities to the loneliest reaches of the galaxy in the now and future, exploring mankind's darkest depths and noblest aspirations. So it is a science fiction and horror collection of short stories, single author collection, which I always like. The cover is interesting. You need to have read that summary to really get what's going on there, don't you? Also on January 14th, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. A lot of people have been very excited about this. A lot of big Grady Hendrix fans out there. I've jokingly said that I'm not going to read it, not because I'm against it. It's a very interesting premise, if you ask me. I love the cover of this book. It's got like this hand in a lava lamp with this ochre orange text, and it's got this kind of fat serif text that I just love, and a lot of text with a very long title like that. It's got all kinds of text going on in the front, but it looks witchy and cool and interesting with that nostalgia vibe, and it's the nostalgia stuff that I'm not interested in, but you know, someday I'll read it, just not today. So they call them the Wayward Girls. Loose girls. Girls who grew up too fast. And they're sent to Wellwood House in St. Augustine, Florida, where unwed mothers are hidden by their families to have their babies in secret, to give them up for adoption, and most important of all, to forget any of it ever happened. 15-year-old Fern arrives at the home in the sweltering summer of 1970, pregnant, terrified, and alone. Under the watchful eye of the stern Miss Wellwood, she meets a dozen other girls in the same predicament. Everything the girls eat, every moment of their waking day, and everything they're allowed to talk about is strictly controlled by adults who claim they know what's best for them. Then Fern meets a librarian who gives her an occult book about witchcraft, and the power is in the hands of the girls for the first time in their lives. But power can destroy as easily as it creates, and it's never given freely. There's always a price to be paid, and usually it's paid in blood. What a great summary. That's one thing I love about some of these very popular books. You know, you read a Riley Sager book, you read that summary on the back. Grady Hendrix, same sort of thing. Stephen Graham Jones. Really popular authors have that marketing team behind them, and their summaries are just so well written. So well written. And yeah, that is no exception. And a great cover to boot. Like, I can see why everyone's very excited. So January 28th, at dark, I Become Loathsome by Eric LaRocca. Speaking of very popular authors, I like this cover. It's simplistic, and the title is not 27 words long, so I'm stoked. It's got this red cover, red head that's like lit from the front with a very dim, dark red light on a black background, and this like hands grasping it. It's just creepy looking, and we've moved away from that drippy oil painting look, which is kind of refreshing, and it's got a little more stark and lighter typography. So yeah, really cool look. Who knows, there may be books that look like the other Eric LaRocca books you're more familiar with coming out from some other press, but this is the one I've seen, and I love this cover. A single line of text glowing in the darkness of the internet. If you're reading this, you've likely thought that this world is better off without you. Written by Ashley Luton, who has often thought the same and worse in recent years since his wife died and his young son has disappeared. But death is not for him. He has constructed a peculiar ritual for those who desire to die, but are at war with their yearning for a better life. Struggling to overcome his own endless grief, one night Ashley finds a connection with Jinx, a potential candidate for Ashley's next ritual, who spins a tale both revolting and fascinating. Thus begins a relationship that traps the two men in an ever-tightening spiral of painful revelations where long-hidden secrets are dragged kicking and screaming into the light. For some reason, My mouth can't fit around the words of this summary. I had to rewrite it a little bit as I was speaking because I tried 700 times to read this summary straight. And it's just, I don't know. And that's part of why I haven't read a lot of Eric LaRocca. I have to read lines over and over again sometimes, and I'm not usually susceptible to that. I can read a lot of convoluted authors or poetic authors. Maybe this book will be different. I'm hearing already that it's got really good reviews. Also on January 28th, we have Old Soul by Susan Barker. And this cover is like this yellow sans serif font. And we'll see this coming up in other books in February. I've seen it in quite a few books. This yellow text is like the new thing over this loose pastel sketch of a woman's face. So it's a very pretty looking cover. In Osaka, two strangers, Jake and Mariko, miss a flight. Over dinner, they discover that they both brutally lost loved ones. And both of those people's paths crossed with this strange, beguiling woman that no one has seen since. Following the traces of this mysterious person, Jake travels from country to country gathering chilling testimonies from others who've encountered her across the decades. A trail of shattered souls that eventually leads them to Theo, a dying sculptor in rural New Mexico who knows the woman better than anyone and just might hold the key to who or what she is. I like this story. And this reminds me quite a bit of a take on Ramsey Campbell type stuff. So if you like quiet horror, I think this will be for you. I'm pretty excited about this book and seeing reviews of it. January 28th as well is Our Winter Monster by Dennis Mahoney. And this one has been getting quite a bit of buzz. Everyone loves monster stories. Everyone loves winter stories. A winter monster story, I mean, it's in the title. It's got this red text with this bold serif style, very stark red text on a mostly white background that has this sort of stylized, like blue and red and white and black ice cave, but it's mostly white, so it's very, very stark looking cover. For the last year, Holly and Brian have been out of sync. Neither can forget what happened that one winter evening. Neither can forgive what's happened since. Tonight, Holly and Brian race toward Pine Brook, New York to outrun a blizzard on their way to a ski village getaway they hope will save their relationship. But soon they lose control of the car and then of themselves. Now, Sheriff Kendra Book is getting calls about a couple in trouble, along with reports of a brutal and mysterious creature rampaging in the town, leaving a trail of crushed cars, wrecked buildings, and mangled bodies in the snow. To Kendra, who lost another couple in the snow just 7 weeks ago, the danger feels personal, but not as personal as it feels to Holly and Brian, who are starting to see the past, the present, and themselves in a monstrous new light. I had talked about this briefly over my winter horror video, and that is a really good roundup of winter horror books if you're looking for some. Not just recent releases either, like some older books too. And for the final book, it's actually one I'm reading right now, January 31st, Strange Stones by Edward Lee and Mary Sangiovanni. I have a whole bunch of Edward Lee books that I'm going to talk about very, very soon, as well as that shelf of turned around books. More on that in a second. So yeah, January 31st, the cover's tan. It's got these stones in the shape of a skull, and it's got the author's name sort of ringing this little design. It's an interesting looking book, but it doesn't speak to me about what it's about, which is like sort of an extreme, a cosmic take on a Lovecraftian slipstream sort of time-jumping book. Professor Everard, weird fiction scholar and proclaimed critic of H.P. Lovecraft's works, is no stranger to making people mad. Giving convention presentations on the triteness and melodrama of Lovecraft's work pays the bills, and sometimes he even gets laid. When he angers a beautiful yet dangerous witch and devotee of Lovecraft's work, she casts a spell on him, sending him to a dimension where Lovecraft's works are very real and very deadly. Everard must find a way through this alternate dimension to get home before the worst of Lovecraft's horrors prove what a master of monstrosities he really was. And there's very few authors like Edward Lee who take Lovecraftian stories and put them into the extreme horror, somewhere where I don't know if old Howard Phillips ever thought they'd go himself, and really remind you of how grotesque and horrific his work really was. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun reading that right now. So I'll be talking more about that book. And as I said, Edward Lee, I've got a whole bunch of really cool collectible Edward Lee books that I just picked up. So I'll be talking them in an upcoming video. But I think first off, I will be talking about this row of books I have turned around. You know, I'm not a fan of putting my books like that, so there's got to be a reason for it. That I'll be talking about in the next video, where I read things off my shelf. There are about 26 books there. If you recall, last year I did the 25 books Read What You Own challenge, and I'm sort of doing that again this year. I don't think I'm going to torture myself as badly as I did before, so we'll talk about those books soon. So I know a lot of these books are out already. If you've read them, let me know, or if there's anything here that you are now going to add to your reading pile, let me know in the comments below, as well as anything that you think I ought to be reading. Thank you so much for watching, and have an spooky day.